everybody! So, writer's block. The most dreaded of all afflictions of writers everywhere. Almost every writer at some point deals with what we call writer's block. I've dealt with it, you've probably dealt with it, your favorite author has probably dealt with it, but there are tips and tricks you can use to try and overcome writer's block. But there are tips and tricks you can use to overcome and write through a writer's block. These tips are how I personally deal with writer's block. These may not work for everybody. Some of them might work for you. Some of them might sound like the absolute worst suggestion you've ever heard. But these are the things that personally work for me. So if you want to find out how I deal with writer's block and have managed to start writing every single day, keep watching. Number 1, exercise. So for me, I like to exercise in the form of jogging or going for a run. It is the most cathartic and freeing for me, and it's a form of exercise I personally enjoy. However, you can do any sort of exercise that you enjoy as long as you are getting out there and actually exercising, breaking a sweat, getting your heart rate up, that sort of thing. So the reason that exercise, and specifically running for me, works for me is when I'm running, it's a chance for me to clear my mind and to step away from the stressors in my everyday life and just focus on my body and my music or an audiobook or something of the sort, and just focus on that. And this chance to free my mind really opens up my creative flow. Not to mention, like I said, it lowers stress, but more than that, when I'm running, there's this chance for my mind to just sort of wander off and do its own thing. Obviously, some people hate running, and that's fine, but when I run, I try not to think about what my body is going through at the time because it makes it harder for me to run for a long period of time. So I like to let my mind wander, focus on other things, and so for me, that's typically working through issues I'm having with story, characters, plot, world building, that sort of thing. So because of that, running is really a good time for me to set aside to just let my mind think about my novel, what I'm working on, while I'm exercising, so I feel like I'm not just wasting my time sitting around daydreaming. I am doing something good for my body as well. It's also really easy to run and do other things that help you get over writer's block, the next 2 things I'm going to talk about at the same time, so you can kind of effectively multitask and really help you clear your mind while doing something that's good for your body. So that's why I recommend running so much, or any form of exercise. I just keep saying running because running is what works for me. It's what I like to do. Number 2, music. So this one is pretty common, and it's something you'll probably hear on a lot of different websites and vlogs about how to get over writer's block. Music for a lot of people is a stimulant for creativity. It activates your brain, makes you think. It can set the tone for the kind of scene you want to write, something you're struggling with. A lot of authors will create a specific playlist for a specific character, scene, chapter, book, whatever. So I personally have a playlist for my main character and one for each of the supporting characters that make up like the core 4 of my book. I also have one for different types of scenes. So my novel is a fantasy adventure action YA novel. So I have one for action scenes, sad scenes, happy scenes, scenes where she should be filled with wonder. I have playlists for when she's getting into a fight, when she's happy, when she's sad. It helps me create the mood for the scene I want to write. And this is something that a lot of authors use. I highly recommend making a playlist to help you write. Number 3, read and or watch movies. So you've probably heard it before. It's on a lot of writing advice. You hear it from famous authors on YouTube. It's everywhere on writing blogs, everything, is to read more. A good writer is also an avid reader. This probably won't be that difficult for you, as most people who like to write also love to read. They tend to go hand in hand, I know. I'm obviously amongst those. I love to read. I'm getting a degree in English. I read a lot. I love to read. I like classic literature. It's what inspires me most often. However, whatever inspires you to write or helps you get the creative juices flowing for your particular project, read it, whatever works for you. I would also suggest reading a lot in the genre you want to write in to get an idea of what's been done, what the standard conventions are, what cliches and tropes are plaguing the genre, and what you can do to subvert them, be different, stand out in your genre. But reading is not just about improving your vocabulary and having an example of good writing, but reading can also be helpful because it shows you bad writing. If you've ever read a bad book, then it kind of gives you an idea of what you don't want to put in your book. So for me, I absolutely cannot stand love triangles, especially in YA novels, so I will never write one. I can't stand them. I think that they're really hard to pull off properly, and most of the time, they're just an author's lazy way of trying to add more drama and conflict to an already pretty weak plotline. So the more you read in and out of the genre you want to write in, the more you'll be exposed to both good and bad writing, both of which you can learn a lot from. But aside from reading, I also highly recommend watching movies, specifically ones that are cinematically attractive or just visually, stunning. For me, this is a lot of times actually Miyazaki films. If you don't know who Hayao Miyazaki is, he's a Japanese film director who makes a lot of animated films that, if you have never seen them, are actually quite stunning to watch. The animation is really beautiful, fluid, the characters have a lot of depth, and the storylines are very interesting. So a lot of times when I'm having a creative slump, it's really helpful for me to sit down and watch like an hour-and-a-half long Miyazaki film because I find them very engaging and stimulating for my creative flow. That's just one example of the kind of movie and book that works for me. You should read and or watch whatever will help you the most. For me, movies that stimulate my creativity most are ones that combine the visuals of a movie, obviously, with a good plot and good characters like a book, but also have a really powerful and moving score, because those kind of movies are like meshing books and music together. So like reading and music together to make one great conglomerate of creativity inspiration. Number 4, free write, or stream of consciousness writing, or write about your book. So when I say write about your book, I do mean world building or character creation or other sort of things that'll help you get closer to writing your novel and will get you in the mindset to write about your novel, but might not exactly be writing your novel. I said in my last vlog that these things don't help you finish your first draft, and they don't add to your word count, but I think that if you're really stuck for writing and you need ideas and writer's block is really a barrier for you right now, that world building and character creation can get you in the right mindset to then afterwards, you still have to write actual words for your story, but starting your session out by world building or character creation or something, writing about the world, the story, the novel, can really help you put words to page for the actual manuscript. When I say free writing or stream of consciousness, I mean just sit down at whatever scene you're at and start typing away whatever words come to your mind in relation to your novel until you can start forming actual pretty sentences and nicer prose and something that looks like an actual story, and you can go back and delete any of the free writing you did first if it's ugly and it doesn't fit your novel and you hate it. That's fine, that's what editing's for. Nobody has to read that writing if you don't want them to. Number 5, make writing a habit. So this was actually a suggestion I got from one of my professors in graduate school. She was talking specifically about academic writing, but it does apply, in my opinion, to creative writing as well. It writes to pretty much everybody who wants to make writing a career in any way, shape, or form. I said this in my last vlog, but you have to write every single day if you want to get better at writing and if you want to help yourself overcome writer's block. Even if your writing is not great or you're not proud of what you're putting on paper, you are still putting words to paper and getting yourself closer to your eventual goal. If it's a habit, it'll feel weird not to do it, and because you write every day, your writing will get better and better with time. Writing every day and making writing a habit will also help you cope with understanding why you get writer's block. Number 6, understanding why you get writer's block. So we're starting to get into territory of advice that you might not want to hear. A lot of times when people watch vlogs or read blog posts about how to overcome writer's block, people are looking for some magical solution to their problems, and I'm gonna be honest with you, there isn't one. It's important to understand that a lot of times writer's block comes from a fear of mediocrity in your own writing. You're hesitant to write because you're afraid what you're going to write is going to be bad. This fear of putting something bad out into the world will stop a lot of people from actually writing, and is the main cause of writer's block. Trust me, I've been there. I spent years and years and years psychoanalyzing myself and convincing myself that I was not a good writer, that I would never be a good writer, that I would never ever amount to anything, and my writing would never get any better. So every day I was afraid to start writing because I was afraid that what I would put on paper, the words that I would write down, would be so terrible they'd be irredeemable. I told myself, oh, I just have writer's block. I'll get over it eventually. If I just wait it out, it'll get better and I'll be able to write again. But the truth of the matter is that I was really afraid to write because I was really afraid I wouldn't be good enough. I convinced myself that this fear was writer's block, when in fact it was just my own lack of self-confidence in my abilities and talents. Number 7, and this is the most important in my opinion, is you need to learn to forgive yourself. So when I first started writing the first draft of the manuscript I'm working on now, I was so hard on myself about everything I wrote. To be honest with you, I sent my first draft to my family and a few of my friends, and my dad point blank told me he didn't like it. He read about the first 5 to 6 chapters and told me he liked one scene in the first 6 chapters. And he really disliked the way the plot was going, and he didn't like pretty much most of my characters and had no connection to my main character. Which was, I'm not gonna lie, it was really hard to hear. But I realized it was just a first draft and I could fix it. I was able to slowly forgive myself for the mistakes that he saw in my novel and work on improving it instead of just wallowing in self-pity and, oh, I'm such a terrible writer. No, you're not. You wrote a first draft and it was bad, so fix it. Like, you weren't perfect. To really help yourself overcome writer's block, you have to learn to forgive yourself for your mistakes and your shortcomings, and more than that, for your inexperience. If this is your first time writing a book, you can't expect it to be perfect the first time. So those are my 7 tips to help you get over your writer's block. I think that the last 3 are the most important, but they're the ones you probably want to hear the least. I do use all of them in order to help me write, especially when the words don't feel like they're coming that day. So if you liked this video, subscribe down below, hit that bell somewhere to get a notification when I post. I'll do so every Friday. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Go ahead and roast me in the comments, or you could also leave a suggestion for things you do to overcome writer's block for other people to read down below. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Tumblr if you are so inclined. Bye. Bye. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!